All right. Well, I'm trying to drag my feet because the next slide is Todd's. And if I don't move to the next slide, then does he get to talk? Is a bear fault? All right. Todd, get us up to speed about the new SharePoint Skills thing. All right, everybody, welcome to Sympraxis. It is April 29th, 2026, and we are diving into AI in SharePoint. So most of the team is here, not Carrie. She's on vacation. Good for her. She needs one after last week's community conference. That was a whirlwind of information. So happy she's on vacation. But in the meantime, the rest of the gang is going to dive into AI in SharePoint. And we sort of, in talking about this one, we knew we had covered Copilot before, and we have covered some things about SharePoint having some AI features, but we haven't sort of revisited that since there's been sort of an explosion of things, and not all of it is easily explained, as we will show you. All right, we're going to start off with what is AI in SharePoint. We're going to talk about some use cases and show you some things. Because it's confusing, we're going to talk about some cautions. And then we always have time for Q&A. Do that as we go. Ask your questions in the chat. Put your hand up. Come off mute. Join the conversation if you would like to. And so let's get started. All right, we're going to start with what is AI in SharePoint. And Mark, you're going to sort of help us know what we're going to actually talk about today.
I'm going to frame things and then step back.
Oh, wow. All right.
So they're at the moment, and everything is in flux all the time these days.
Really
there are
is.
3 entry points in your average SharePoint page with some caveats of you've got to have licenses and you got to have things turned on and all that sort of stuff. But up at the top in the what we at least used to call Sweet Bar, I still do, there's a button that says Open Agents. So that opens, well, we'll talk in depth about what each one is.
Looks like an infinity symbol.
Yeah, except, and that's the hole that you can drop into if you click it.
Exactly.
So the next thing is down at the bottom, which has been called various things, but it's the internal name for it is the floating action button. So if you hear somebody at Microsoft say Fab, they're not talking about your shoes.
They're not talking about the Fab 40, thank God.
I mean, they're talking about my shoes, but you know.
Well, Derek's shoes. And then so those are in sort of any page, or actually any context in SharePoint. And then on the right side, when you're in a list or library, there's a button in the toolbar that says AI Actions with some capabilities behind it. So take it away, folks, and explain what all those do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, but wait.
But, yeah, exactly.
Don't take it away yet. Leave it here. Leave it here.
There are some required licensing and admin configurations. I went and grabbed a screenshot of the Copilot settings screen. It's really, 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 really tiny. And there's 2 sort of things on there. One is to enable the Frontier program, and the other one is to allow extra models to be used in your tenant. So those 2 things need to be enabled for you to use the third thing on this list, which is the Frontier program, which is giving you all of those extra features that are coming to the SharePoint UI, as far as like things on the Fab and other things like that. There is a caveat, and I don't know what the state is exactly. My understanding is it's still not sorted, but in the EU this is not available yet because of issues with the Anthropic models. So maybe eventually, and well, Anthropic models and privacy laws. So maybe soon they are working on it. So for all the stuff we're going to talk about today, you need a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. That's the currently $20 or $30 a month all-you-can-eat Copilot license. You need one of those in your tenant to even get the semantic index, which allows you to do other things which are licensed or charged differently, like pay-go services, and we will touch on those things a little bit later. And then there's all the things that turn on and off depending on if you're in standard or targeted release. And Derek and Patrick and I were talking about this morning, and we're not even sure Microsoft knows what the rings of release are anymore. Because we certainly don't. They say they're still standard and targeted, but we think there's more. I think they're doing A/B testing. We can't find any two tenants with Copilot licensing that look the same and that behave the same. And even in our own tenant, as we were testing things, Todd's like, it looks that way on my screen. It looks that way on my screen. And Mark's like, it doesn't look that way on my screen. I'm like, okay. So there is a lot of difficulty. Yeah, the 9 rings of hell for sure.
Yes.
There's a lot of difficulty in, communicating this kind of stuff. I mean, that Patrick and I were going back and forth on this. Like, the ability to train or communicate or do corporate comms or help your employees know what they're going to see and what to use and what not to use. And when we get to the slide on cautionary tales, we'll dive in a little bit more, but there's things that are maybe bad to click on too. So you definitely want to review this admin configuration screen very deeply. There is a place where you can turn PayGo on, and there are features that use PayGo, but you're going to want to set a budget. You're going to want to make sure you have it nailed down, like who you're letting use PayGo, because you can security trim it to people, not just all your organization if you want to. And you can also give it a budget that it can't go over and who it should notify if it does. So all of those things are things you want to think about and look at before you sort of open the spigot and let this sort of run wild. All right, let's move on to the Open Agents button, Derek.
Yes. So, Mark pointed out the Open Agents button earlier. I'm finding, and this is sort of general product information, that I'm finding the methodology of guess the icon happening a lot, where labels aren't anywhere near, or tooltips aren't anywhere near the icons. So now we are just supposed to understand that this is the icon for agents. But again, your mileage may vary. It is lazy loaded, so it shows up anywhere it darn well feels like. I've seen it at the end. Eventually.
It's at some point.
It is slower than the gear, to be honest. It is loading after the gear. So I've seen it at the end. I've seen it somewhere between, like the feedback and the megaphone. It just shows up. But essentially, when you click it, it's going to open the agents panel. And the agent panel lets you query the site that you're in. It is contextual. So if you're in a library or a list, it will let you contextually talk about, get information about that entity. So either the list or the library. Here, I did it on our marketing site, and all I did was ask it to summarize the site. But if you're doing something, trying to run this on, say, a corporate news site, it will start to synthesize all the information about the news and the latest news and all of that. You can also get that same information for document libraries as well. Todd's going to talk about these later, but you can also use skills inside of these as well. So there's a lot you can do, and that's going to be your first spot. So moving into the document libraries themselves, this is, again, really the same thing. You can create an agent. This is in the toolbar for the document library, and it's called AI Actions, and it lets you create an agent. Essentially, this is going to pop up the screen that creates what we saw, 6 months ago as the SharePoint Agents box, where you can give your agent a source, you can give it a behavior, you can talk about it. So here, I created one on the marketing documents library that we have, really just to act as a marketing assistant and make sure that what we're creating is in brand and on color palette, and make sure it's the right voice. You can do this, and again, it is contextual, so you can do it on an entire document library. You can do it on a folder. You can do it on an individual document. So if you've got one of those employee manuals that's like 300 pages, you could create an agent specifically for that particular document.
Yeah, and we talked about the SharePoint agents before, and so we have another video that dives into a lot more detail. It's just sort of the button and how you get to it has changed
Yeah.
quite significantly, I think, and it's kind of confusing that it's not
Absolutely.
some new thing. It's sort of the thing we had before with a new brand and a new label. Oh, shocking! Microsoft
Absolutely.
changed the name of something and the way it looks. Shocked. All right, let's move on then. Patrick, you have been playing with this or like looking at this, and you're the one who notices it first usually, but AI in the pages. What's happening there?
Yeah, so there's a few things here, AI in pages. You can you can use AI to create a page, which I believe someone else is speaking about shortly. But this is more so on the page itself. You can use AI to start your text or write out, a rough description of what you want the content to be on the page. You can also use it to refine existing content on a page and kind of give you a different look and feel to it. So kind of the two screenshots here. One is just you see the little sparklies next to the plus area for the section. If you click on that, you can see the dialog box pops up and it says create a section about. So you could just type in that. It also has suggestions down below and a few possible items that you may want your content on the page to be about. But the other thing that kind of pops up in your dialog box or not really dialog box, in your pop-up on the right, where your toolbox and stuff are, is also another way to look at it. So let's shape this page together. Build out this page from a document or file, which is kind of cool. So particularly for those of us dealing with a lot of clients who are moving from file serves to M365 or something like that, and they have a lot of documents, you can actually take that document and ask AI to build a page from it. Now, all of this is said with a grain of salt.
Oh, okay.
But
I was going to say, do you want to go on to design ideas?
We can go into that next, yes.
Okay. Oop. Did I hit? Okay, I didn't hit it twice. Thank God.
So the other thing that we were just talking about, or Julie just mentioned, was AA design ideas. So say you have text on a page, but you want to add some visual interest to it, add some photos, add some things like that, or figure it out. There is another tab called Design Ideas that you can click on, and it kind of looks at what's on the page and offers an alternative to what that might look like. These by no means are out of the box ready to go. So while you might select that top design idea and put it on a page, you need to go in and do things like make sure your headings are the right size. For accessibility reasons, you need to make sure that your text is actually updated and obviously correct, but also your normal style, not no spaces, which is generally how it comes in. The other thing I do want to quickly point out on this is in some tenants, this icon no longer exists here. It is now, as of this morning in one of my tenants, a new icon that looks like a design. And this is two-part. You have design ideas and then templates that you can access for your sections now. So kind of cool, but just know that that is one of those things that might change slightly.
Patrick, do you think that some of the iconography is being dynamically generated by Copilot in the ever use?
It certainly feels that way.
I would not be surprised. I mean, we've certainly seen that with, in creating lists and libraries and things like that, where icons just magically appear. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think, as Julie was saying, what makes it difficult is it changes by tenant. So we don't know what it's going to look like.
I really think Microsoft may have introduced some A/B testing into their UX.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that is sort of why we're sort of feeling like the 9 rings of hell, because there's targeted and there's the standard, but I think they're also within each of those, like pushing out little UI things that look different to people, and it's really confusing.
I can actually confirm one thing that Corey Newton-Smith, who's a wonderful PM driving the product, but when she had her Miami keynote, they talked about what I'll talk about in a second here, but the kind of main button on the SharePoint page used to be kind of A/B testing between the SharePoint logo and the little page with the sparkles icon logo, and they were trying to identify which one would work best, and I bet that did not fit into a specific ring.
Cool. All right. I was
But-
answering a question. Ooh, go ahead.
Just to finish up on this, I mean, the nice thing about this is it does provide the ability to, for those who might be a little lacking in design or need some ideas of what to do, it can at least give you kind of a good starting point to look at. So if you flip the screen there, Julie.
All right.
So here's one, we just, the upper left there, starting with your basic text. So frankly, I had AI create this for me. So they just threw some text together, and then I opened the ideas box, the design ideas, selected one, and you can see how it took that content that was there and makes it a little bit more visually interesting. As I said, you do still need the human aspect to go in and make sure you're following usability guidelines and your governance for your sites and things like that. But it is kind of a quick way to give your bland pages a little bit of a glow up, for lack of a better
Nice.
way of putting that.
Nice. All right. Let's move on to Mr. Cashman. Talk to us about the Fab and not the Fab 40, please.
So no
Or the
Fab
Fab
40.
40.
This is kind of the most dynamic singular template, because with this new Fab 40, we get a lot of different experiences and a lot of different capabilities. And it's a little bit different than a lot of what we've been talking about. It's kind of been now a primary button within SharePoint, but it isn't the singular thing that you go build or you have built or you use outside. It's really an entry point to use AI in SharePoint. I think that's the most common recent terminology. But it was originally launched as the knowledge agent. It was kind of a thing, an entity, a feature. Now it's really more of a pervasive capabilities. But they do call it the floating action button. So if you see Microsoft talking about it, they'll reference it as Fab, the Fab. I actually heard a conversation with the OneNote team who has something similar inside it. They call it the DAB. So it's not to be funny. They call it that dynamic action button. So we gave them a little
remember.
feedback.
This.
There you go. There you go.
Too old for this.
Maybe we could do it like in 3, 2, 1. That usually gets my kids' eyes rolling. But anyway, it is that primary button there, and it has a lot behind it that you can do. It opens up kind of a chat experience. You're chatting with SharePoint, asking it to do certain things, to summarize, to create. There's a lot of things like what Patrick was just showing you, to be able to design the page and ask it to do certain things based on where you're at. So it's very contextual. There are some bigger items that were kind of a lift and shift from Project Cortex, SharePoint Syntax, Microsoft Syntax, now Content Services, and Microsoft 365 that are actually plumbed into this thing, like autofill and some of the management of content and the site itself from an administration perspective. So it's a load of a lot of things, and it's a lot more than just the knowledge agent was when it started. So that button has a lot behind it. The one tricky thing that we found out as we were testing, and I think Julie noticed this first, was you see the button, and then you start clicking the other buttons that Mark was talking about. And sometimes the Fab floats away and it's not so Fab, it's unfab. And then it comes back in certain contexts. So anyway, just to be aware, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. It is a great thing to click on. And the first thing you click on, like I think a lot of things now in AI, is you get kind of the, what am I doing? What page am I on? What site am I in? And it gives you an idea of what you can do with the thing. So it's a great, test it out, try it out, just click buttons, don't even type prompts, and you'll see a lot of what it can do behind it. But it's very site oriented. So the next thing is very unsite oriented, and that's I think a good thing. So if we move into where you can find SharePoint AI outside of SharePoint, next slide, is the concept of SharePoint agents when you're in the Microsoft 365 chat. So if you go m365.cloud.microsoft, that's now the Microsoft 365 app, and it is all about Copilot. And on the left rail is sort of a, you got to get yourself organized and aware of what's over on the left-hand side. a big chunk of what's there are all of your agents, and they change a lot depending on which ones you're using, which ones you've searched for, have you pinned them. And 3, when you type in the word SharePoint, are the SharePoint lists agent, the SharePoint page agent, and the SharePoint admin agent. The caveat being, if you're not an admin, you won't see the SharePoint admin agent as a choice. But these are ways of starting agnostically. I want to build a list. I want to build a page. Let me create a prompt that helps me define. I want to create a list that helps me collect contacts at the next event that I'm attending. You don't have to give it a lot of information. It'll start to tell you, here are the columns I'm going to build out. Here is the structure of the library, depending on what you're trying to build out. The page. And ultimately, you basically have a conversation and then say, let's do it. Let's create that list. Then it'll ask you, where do you want to put it? And I think that's a good thing. It has a nice user interface. It's not just chatting. So you get to actually select from your recent sites and put it where you want to put it. And then after that, it just then becomes a list in that site that's usable, functional. You can even continue to use AI in SharePoint to work with that list or page. But it's a starting point outside of SharePoint, and it's among all of the agents like research agent, an analyze agent, sales agent. So it really is in whichever agents you're using. If you've never seen them or tried them, again, type in SharePoint, jump in, ask it to do something and see what happens. And then ultimately it leads you to putting it in the right container where you want it to be.
I will just follow up on that quickly, though, and just say that it is pretty cool that it can create the list for you, but it creates everything at the list level. So if you are a strong component of content types and building your metadata at the correct location, this does not do that yet. So just bear that in mind, that while it is great for people who may not have a lot of familiarity with SharePoint to be able to create a list really quickly, there's a lot behind the scenes that it just doesn't even know about. So just be aware.
Yeah, and I mean, there are arguments sometime, if we're being fair, that you don't need information architecture for a particular one-off scenario. If you're never going to try to go get the data for, roll it up together or surface it somewhere else and need that. Yeah, I mean, for one-off things, it's probably fine. The problem is that this gives an ability for people to make things where there might be in a context where the thing they're creating should take advantage of information architecture. And if they're in an organization that does do that, then this sort of is the access of the modern SharePoint Online age. And by that, I mean Microsoft Access, for all of those who are old enough to know about Access database sprawl. All right, cool. Are you good, Mark? Are we moving on?
I'm good. I'm just going to remain at the organization level. Screw the enterprise.
All right. Well, I'm trying to drag my feet because the next slide is Todd's. And if I don't move to the next slide, then does he get to talk? Is a bear fault? All right. Todd, get us up to speed about the new SharePoint Skills thing.
So these are super exciting, and like we've talked about, for the last 20 minutes, you may or may not have them. They're in preview, so they may have rolled out to your tenant. They may not have, whatever. But now we've got skills in SharePoint. And Ami mentioned in the chat that if you read some of the documentation or watch some of the videos about this, you need to run some PowerShell and you need to turn on some site collection features and this whole list of stuff. I can tell you, when I first saw the announcement about these a week or so ago at the M365 conference, I just went into the SharePoint agent chat and said, "Can you do SharePoint Skills?" And it told me. It's like, yep, I sure can. Tell me what you want to do. So if you have any curiosity about whether you've got these things that I'm about to wow you with, just go into your fab in the chat, ask if it can do skills, and it'll tell you if it can or not. So what are these? So these are like business processes, but they're created with natural language. So it's kind of like what you would do in Power Automate, except there's no programming, there's no dragging boxes around, there's no figuring out logic. You just tell it in plain text what you want to do. Go to this document library, go through all the documents, look for this certain thing, or whatever you want to do. and it will create a skill for you. It'll create all the files for it and save it in a central location that we'll talk about in a minute. And then anybody that is licensed and has permission to do all this stuff can go in and use your skill, use your business process in the environment on the SharePoint site. So it's super cool. I'm really excited about this. Like I said, I'm in a couple of weeks. I'm doing a session in Antwerp about. I was originally going to be the knowledge agents, but now it's just going to be all about skills because it's just so much fun. So I had AI help me with this slide, so it's got some good points on it. But why this is an important thing, why this matters, is because it's one of the ways to capture the expertise that you have without having to have somebody who can program it, and it's all in plain text. So again, these skills are just markdown files. So after you do your little skill creation in the chat, it generates these files. They're files you can just look at. There's a markdown viewer in SharePoint, so anybody can open them up and read them. Anybody who has permission can edit them, so you can tweak the logic, you can add more steps and all that. But it captures the processes that your business already uses. And then it makes it, again, any kind of automation reduces manual effort. So you don't have to do all these steps again. You can just run the skill, and you can give the skill catchphrases. So if you have certain parlance that you use to walk through certain things, you can tell it, these are the catchphrases to look for, so it knows when to use it. They're really, really powerful. What can it do? It can do all kinds of stuff. So the PM, I think he's a PM in charge of this, is a guy named Zach Rosenfield. I've known Zach for 15, 16 years. He's actually the guy that got me into PowerShell with SharePoint 100 years ago.
I need to go find this guy.
Find the Zach Rosenfield. But
he and I have to have words.
He is now in charge of this. So if you go out to his YouTube channel, or he's also got a GitHub repo where he shows a bunch of these things. So you can create list views, all the stuff, the crazy stuff that Chris Kent does. You can actually do that in a skill now. So you can say, walk through this and do all that. It can flag metadata. It can make sure all your files have the metadata. It can look in the documents and do that kind of stuff. All your business rules. For the admins in the group, shout out to all my admins. These are all created in a document library, and they're just files, and they follow the agentskills.io spec. So you can just copy this out. You can copy it to another SharePoint site. We all know from what Julie was telling us earlier that it's using Claude under the covers. So any of the stuff you can do in Claude, with the exception of scripts, you can do with these. So if you've been making skills on other platforms, those skills translate into this, but you can move them around. You can permission them, so some people can't use other skills. It's really great stuff. We could do a whole thing about this.
And maybe we will.
Maybe we will. But Google Zach Rosenfield. He's got a bunch of great stuff on this, and we've got some resources too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we linked some resources, and as we're pointing out, I'll do the cautions, and then I'll talk through what I was just going to say. So we have some cautions. Obviously, without a Copilot license, you don't see any of the UX. So that is, that is a big limitation. The exception to that is if your Copilot, your administrator has configured Copilot, you have at least one Copilot all-you-can-eat license, and they've configured Paygo and added you to be able to use Paygo, and then you would maybe see some of these things. What exactly those things are, I can't exactly tell you. So that is unfortunately a limitation of what I can say on that, but that is the exception. So the Copilot button in the browser is not in SharePoint. And that is incredibly confusing. Patrick was absolutely right to point out the UX miss here, in the sense that we get it because we're in it all the time. But for those users who aren't, when you're in the browser, specifically the Edge browser, and you're on a SharePoint page, you have also the Copilot button in the browser. And that brings up a side panel that does not give you the same experience. So that is not part of SharePoint. That is just Copilot separate from the whole thing. So everything we were talking about, Derek pointed out with the open agents features and whatever, none of that works in that chat. So that's a little bit confusing. Does this make SharePoint any less or more friendly? Go ahead.
It was just a thought that I put in there, and I didn't mean to throw it in, but I since 2016, modernizing SharePoint, one of the big goals was to focus on making it more friendly, making it more accessible from people being able to learn what it does and track, how to use SharePoint. And there was the old joke, you needed a PhD to use SharePoint. And the new joke with Skills is you need an MD to use SharePoint. But the serious point of the statement was, because there's so much happening, the change, the capabilities, and now kind of just having to know how to use SharePoint a little differently, I had that caution thought of, how does this change the approachability of SharePoint? Are people gonna think, oof, it's hard to use or hard to figure out, or I can't always get what I want? It's just that notion of, it was becoming friendly, and now, introducing so much change, it felt a little less friendly.
I'm going to say that I don't think it makes it more friendly at all, in the sense that you have to understand something to be able to even start asking questions. So if you don't know that lists are a thing you can do, how do you ask the fab that you need for a list? Like, I just think there's an aspect, I mean, that's an incredibly simple, example, but if you don't know SharePoint, then you don't know how to ask Copilot or any of these things how to do SharePoint better. Like, so whatever. Before I miss it, because we're at time here. The last caution is, there's a button called Classify and Extract. It's in the document libraries if you have a Copilot license and or if Paygo is turned on for you. But regardless, that button uses Paygo. So if you do that, it's expensive, apparently, from what I've heard from some horror stories I just read about. So just know that Classify and Extract uses a bunch of models, does a bunch of work. It is Paygo, even if you have a Copilot license. So just know that, so you don't get hurt by that. So we've got a bunch of resources. The ones that I want to point out, because we didn't have a whole talk on the skills stuff, Vlad has Vlad's Tech Talk. Everybody probably knows Vlad already. Has a how to build SharePoint skills, everything you need to know. That is an incredibly well done, very in-depth video that Vlad talks you through this whole thing. So he talks about, like the site collection feature that you need to enable, like how skills work, all the things you can do with skills, the things you can't do with skills, the limitations of them, and then gives you some really cool, nobody knows about them tricks. So you absolutely should go, if you're interested in the skill stuff, if that sounds interesting to you, I would start there. Go watch Vlad's video and get up to date on what skills are, so you can begin to play through those. Yeah, and we had Zach's YouTube channel and his community blog up there. So that is where you can go get more information about skills as well. All right, we are over time, so let's wrap up. May 13th, sharing with OneDrive hero links. That is going to be talking about our new hero links. We're going to go through what they are, what's changed, why it's different, why we're all, I think everybody in Sympraxis is really happy about this change. It's something that we've needed for a long time. So I'm pretty psyched about this episode. We'll be just freshly back from the European Collaboration Summit, the ECS. That's next week. I leave Sunday. So get ready. If you haven't signed up yet, I don't know, is there tickets left? I don't even know. Todd's going to go the opposite direction to Techorama. He's going to be in Antwerp and talking about skills. So if you want to join him there. Then TechCon 365 in Chicago. That's most of us, except Todd and Carrie, are going to be at Chicago. We have a discount code that gives you $200 off. Absolutely come and join us there. Mark Cashman and I are maybe doing something extra special there. Might have something to do with baseball. You should definitely come and join us for Chicago. And then after that, in August in Seattle, we have TechCon 365 in Seattle. We don't have a discount code for that yet. So if you're interested in the Seattle one, wait a little longer and we're hopefully going to have a discount code for you. And that's all we've got today. So very good. Thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.